Hello, Tara. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrew. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
So, starting off nice and quick, Tara, when speaking about specifically employee retention, you often use the acronym CARE, which stands for Communication, Authenticity, Relationships, and Empathy. However, in some of your older retention proposals, you used engage instead of empathy. What made you switch from using engage to empathy, and what's the key difference people should take away from this?
Um, in some cases, engage might still be a a more appropriate word, but I switched it to empathy to be completely transparent on the recommendation of my coach. It was about keywords that are interesting, that are trigger words for in the industry. So that's kind of why I changed it. Um, whether it's engage or whether it's empathy, um, I'm a very empathetic speaker. I'm a very empathetic feeler. So I try to share that empathy. And the whole point of when I talk is to get people to look through someone else's eyes and stand in someone else's shoes to kind of understand what it's like to be an employee in an environment that's not very productive, or that's not very supportive, and vice versa. If it's a customer, getting people, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, to look through the eyes of the customer who may be searching for their things online, and this person doesn't even have a website yet. So that frustration, that pieces of the puzzle that tend to knock down your credibility as a business owner. But whether it's empathy or engage was really asking for feedback after the fact. So engaging meant, after the service is done, after for an employee retention situation. Oh, sorry about that. For employee retention, it was really about. Um, Sorry, I'm distracted now. Asking for feedback regardless of whether they've been there for only a week, 2 weeks, a year, but engaging with them throughout to find out and make sure that their lifestyle hasn't changed, that there hasn't been something that you can do as an employer to help make their experience better, based on priorities that changed. For example, people have kids, and now all of a sudden work life balance becomes a much greater need for them. Whereas before, they were willing to work all the overtime and you didn't have to worry about it. So, constantly engaging and being consistent about it, or empathizing with that employee to make sure that you're always understanding what they're going through. Kind of the same thing, just a little bit different wording based on the coach's
Okay.
recommendation. So,
So, kind of what I'm going to come back is like, oh, that's my camera. Set. So, kind of what I'm gathering from that is you're using engage as kind of a way to empathize. So empathy is just kind of a way to take a step back and like say, hey, we don't necessarily need to engage with them. We just need to understand their situation.
mhm.
Okay,
And you
perfect.
do need to, and I shouldn't say that. You do still need to engage with them.
Hmm.
But there's other pieces of that puzzle where you're building relationships, that the engagement is a big part of that. So you can't build
Okay.
a relationship unless you're communicating. If you're communicating, you're still engaging. So there's pieces of that puzzle that still incorporate part of that engagement, even though I changed the ending of that word.
Yeah, absolutely. On that, keeping on kind of the employee retention topic, what would you say are the biggest things for employee retention? Like, what are the biggest key things that employers should look for to keep their employees? Like, what should you focus on?
So, the biggest thing right now is 87% of people want to have a balanced work life situation. So, the problem is that that means something different to everyone. So, as an employer, if you're a small employer where you employ less than 100 employees, you probably know everybody by name, and you probably have the ability to maybe customize certain benefits to match their needs. But larger employers, it's much more difficult. And so, in a larger employer situation, it's very important that managers of departments are taught those skills to communicate, to be authentic with their teammates. All of the things within the CARE acronym are key to building a better structure for your employees and being able to really empower them with the ability to grow. If employees just want to know that they matter. Like, that's the bottom line. They just want to know that they matter. So whatever it is that you have to do to make sure that they know that they matter, um, that's the piece that's missing. Many employers will implement a new a new HR policy, a new benefit of some sort, but it really benefits only, maybe 10% of the population. That doesn't really help people. It frustrates employees. Instead of being able to take a personalized approach. And I realize that there are some logistical and legal um, ramifications of being able to personalize an approach, right? um, you have to be able to make sure that everybody is open and everybody has same opportunity for certain benefits. But I'll use medical as an example. My children are 25 and 27, and when they were still under my insurance up to the age of 26, insurance for them was not, it wasn't even on the radar as far as being important in their job decisions. Now it's much more important. So, what is it that an employer can do to attract a person where healthcare isn't an issue? Or perhaps, somebody has healthcare through their spouse. So if healthcare is not an issue, that saves an employer a ton of money, right? They don't have to pay in for that particular employee. So what else can you do to offer them something that would be of similar um, value, that it is something that they want? So for some people, it might be more time off. Getting rid of this idea that, this, uh, I don't even know what word to use. I'm trying to think of the word, but, where you have to, seniority type of time off system, where the longer you're there, the more time off you get. Well, maybe your millennials really want more time off now. That's what's going to capture them now, because they like that work life balance. And
Interesting.
maybe,
I
oh,
wonder if there's a really interesting thing that I was kind of thinking about as you said this. The work life balance is really important. But the problem is, I think a lot of smaller business owners, like entrepreneurs, are really, really ingrained in like, this is a lifestyle. Like, I really enjoy this. I want to work all the time. And so I wonder if it's like, or there's almost a disconnect there. Like, they don't understand the want for vacation. And so there's like this, like, I guess, tension there that they can't quite understand to the same level. And so I wonder if it almost benefits to have someone just kind of say, hey, we should probably look at this. And then the other mention of like millennials on that is how you had the seniority vacation. I wonder if it wouldn't almost be better to do more vacation up front and then do benefits get better instead. Because tailoring that to as people want, because I know a lot of people, especially in UWSP that I talk to, want to travel a lot. And so not having a lot of vacation would very much be a turnoff for a job.
that's a great idea. Adding in health insurance after you've been at the company for 5 years, or 3 years, but being able to allow them to have, 2 or 3 weeks of vacation the first year that they start. That in itself may be what switches somebody over and gets them to stick for longer than just 6 months.
I also think that a lot of jobs, it's not as much about the pay. Like, that's what you see here. You
Mm.
see more, it's more about the quality, like job satisfaction. So I was reading studies before this about kind of what they see. And from it's essentially says that it isn't as much leadership within the company as it is job satisfaction. And between these three were the three biggest things statistically that they found made people stay longer. It was training and development was number one. So the better you're trained, the more you want to stay. The work environment was number two. So where you work, like if you work at home, if you work in the office, And number three was job satisfaction. And what I thought was really peculiar about the study was the fact that it didn't seem as much as the leadership was there as much as it was just purely the environment and the people that you're around. So it almost seems more important to see who you hire than it is who you have as leadership, which I find really odd. And I want to know your thoughts on that.
I understand why it would appear that way. However, the environment is strictly created by the mindset of each manager and each leader in each department. So that's why the leadership is so important because I've worked for companies where I really didn't like the company at all. Didn't really, I wasn't on the same page as the company values, but I had an amazing boss who helped to train us, who empowered us to understand why he was making the decisions that he made so that we could eventually move up in the company and be in his spot. And it was a very intimate team. We had, three managers and a director. And it was an amazing group of people, and it was probably one of the best work experiences that I've ever had. I've also worked for companies where I love what I do, absolutely, love the product that I'm selling, love what the clients and the customers, but the culture of the company is so bad because of the leadership that in itself can create a huge rift in the experience and customer and like job satisfaction. So job satisfaction is a really broad statement that could be affected by numerous different um, you know aspects. But I want to go back to something that you said earlier when you said that like small business owners are really excited about their work and they just want everybody to work as hard as they do. Okay. Um, a lot of the small business owners that I've encountered, so hair salons, auto repair, HVAC type of companies, um, many of them understand what they're doing as far as they do what they do really well, right? They're really good at fixing cars, really good at cutting hair, really good at tending bar, okay? But just because you're really good at those things doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to add the 15 hats that you're going to wear as an entrepreneur. The janitor, the tax person, the HR person, the financial person. All of these things get, thrust upon you when you decide to sign the check on the front. So, yes, I think that there's a big discrepancy there, but I think a lot of that happens from the training that they get when they go through sources like a small business development center. There's a lot of really good things that come out of those programs as far as setting up the business structure. But what people forget and what they don't get trained on are those soft skills and the skills to be able to communicate, to be able to build relationships, the people part of the business. And realistically, if you take care of your people, they will take care of your customers. Like the sales will come if you take care of the employees. But if you don't take care of the employees, why are they going to help you, accomplish your goals? Why are they going to want to give back to the company that doesn't care? You know, that's the thing that a lot of investors have a difficult time with. I've worked with investors before where they've, purchased a business and they want to pay everybody to do all the stuff, right? And a lot of times it's not okay to do that because when you're paying out a manager, no manager ever felt like they got paid enough to do what they're doing and to care about it as much as the business owner. So in that aspect, no matter what you do, you're always going to have people that are thinking that they're working too hard when they're doing the owner's work, not realizing all the things that an owner does, which starts this cycle of, oh, well, I can break off. I can do this myself. I can do what they're doing and pass off all the work on everybody else. Well, that just, begets this cycle of, then the business fails and the person has to go bankrupt. So all of that money is lost. Um, it's just this horrible cycle of failure, basically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a really interesting thing of like a business owner, it's like the 80-20 rule, right? You can get 80% of the value, but the problem is you can't get that 20% to really help them out without really digging into that. And so what you're running into is you have business owners that are spread so thin between everything that they can't focus in on helping the employees. Like as much as they want to, as much as they want to sit here and help you out, they don't have the bandwidth. Like I know that's one thing that I'm running into is I don't have time. Like the reality is I could work significantly more, but I also know that I'm going to burn out at a certain point, and so I want to take that step back and just allow myself to do the work to the point in which I know I'm not going to burn out. And I think that's kind of where a lot of business owners get to, especially with the HR side of things, of they want to help you, they really do, but they can't because they don't have the bandwidth. And so it's almost beneficial to hire someone else out or have an internal HR person or delegate that and be like, hey, I really want to help everyone out. I totally understand it, but would you be willing to take on this task for X amount of time so that we can help everyone? And I think that's a better way to frame it instead of like, do this work, right? Because then you're saying, hey, I want to help. How about you help me? Kind of thing. And people internally want to help, and so I think that's a really, really good way to frame that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime people notice that an employer is taking steps to make their job easier and to, make it better, a business owner typically, what happens is, they start their business because they really love, fixing cars, they really love cutting hair. And I'm using those only as an example, um, a simple example. And what happens is that they find out that now that they're a business owner, the last thing that they do is the thing that they love the most. They spend more time on all the admin stuff than actually doing the thing that they love the most. And, you know, yes, you can do your own bookkeeping, but what else could you be doing in that time frame for that hour or hour and a half that would get you more money than what you're spending, than what you're saving by not having a bookkeeper? Um, and that's where you have to look at being able to source, especially as a small business owner, finding collaborations with other businesses that are going to help you get what you want. Whether it's a HR business center, there's a couple of those in the area. I know that there's specific services out there that only do HR type of duties, taxes, bookkeeping. These are the major ones that I see that delegated out. And then let's get into the digital marketing. Those that think that they can do their own website, and really, it's a lot more work than what they realized.
Exactly.
So, um, yeah, I agree. There's a lot
It's
of people like that.
it's just that idea of leverage, right? Where are you better off delegating it and where are you better off keeping it internally?
And there's cost benefit analysis that you can do to figure out where you're at and what are because sometimes bringing someone on to increase your revenue, or trying to bring in more people, means that you have to do X number more in order to be able to realize the return on your investment. Um, but if you have the ability to scale that and you can actually get that return on your investment, there's ways to find out how to do that. And if you can get a return, it's most definitely to your benefit to bring in and source as much as you can. And
Yeah.
I'll also mention with that, you can also, instead of paying cash for some services, there's a lot of small business owners out there that are willing to trade.
I know the problem, one thing that I actually learned is there's a problem with trading a lot of things for tax reasons, especially for corporations. And I didn't know that. I don't know all of the legality of it, but I know there's some really weird caveats in there. Now, question two that I wanted to ask you was actually before you started your own company, you worked at Haibu as a digital marketing specialist,
Hmm.
and you were quite successful within the company, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
However, it's my understanding that you took a leave of absence before coming back and then
Hmm.
leaving the company. Would you be willing to explain what kind of drove this leave of absence? What made you want to start your own company? Especially given that being an entrepreneur and running your own company has a whole host of difficulties.
Um, well, what happened is I worked for this company. I was a digital marketing specialist. My background is in digital marketing, and I have an MBA and I've got a master's in internet marketing. I've been working with small businesses since 2011 and or before then, and really helping them to develop their presence online. Knowing even 12, 15 years ago how important that online presence was, it was something that really drove me to help small businesses be in that space. The thing that I found, especially in central Wisconsin, is that a lot of people are 10 years behind the times. So you know they just didn't get it, and so a lot of the conversations that I had um, were similar to when I had another company back from like 2010 to 2012. I had a company called Central Night Out, and it was a place where it was kind of like a website that had information about bars, restaurants, bands, happy hour specials, dinner specials, things like that. Anything for central and the four central Wisconsin cities, and that lasted about 3 years. I had about 80 paid clients, and I had family things that happened, and I wasn't able to work and do that anymore. So I had to take a step back. But I loved working with the clients, and I loved the entertainment side of things. I love live music. I love having fun, going out, etc. So it was a perfect fit for me to be able to go out and do those kinds of things. When I got hired at Haibu, it was perfect because I got to do the exact same thing that I was doing with my other company, except I had support to help me with all the stuff. So all I had to do was sell, and then, at least in my mind when I got hired, this was what it was like. Um, all I had to do was sell, and then I would be, golden, because I had all the support to do all the good stuff. Well, as it turns out, a lot of times the products that they sell at Haibu are amazing, and I would never say anything against that. However, there's I'm a survivor. I'm a person who finds a will. If there's a Where there's a will, there's a way. And I push the boundaries a lot with my clients' websites, with the abilities that they could do. And I'm like, well, because I know what should be done, or I know from a education standpoint how things should look. I was very particular about the ads that were built, or the different types of pages that were on the website. I knew what should be there, instead of just having the assembly line effect of like, okay, we're just going to put these on there and then go back later and fix it. So it was kind of a self imposed problem. I didn't need to do the things that I was doing. I did them myself because I felt obligated. I felt an ethical obligation to be able to do those things the right way for my clients. And I still stand by every single thing that I sold, as far as interacting with my clients, because I loved what I did, and I truly believed in the product that I was selling. The change came when the last year things got a little bit stressful um, with the company culture, with leadership, and despite the
Was
fact
that?
that
I'm just gonna ask because for timeline purposes, was that like just after COVID, if I remember correctly?
no, COVID was in 21, so this was like probably 2 years past COVID. I mean, this was like last year, so
Oh, okay,
23.
okay. I thought it was a little bit closer to COVID because that might partially explain kind of the management change there as well. Just because there's definitely a lot of really COVID COVID shook everything up. So I was just
It
curious
did.
if that played a role in it or if it didn't.
No. The problem is that
Did
there
not.
wasn't
Okay.
a management change. In fact, the
Oh.
company went from a print company,
Mhm.
which it was years ago, as the Yellow Book, Haibu Yellow Book, and then it turned into a completely digital company. And so the leaders that they had in place, the managers that were in place, were leaders when they still were the Yellow Book. So it was very old fashioned thinking, trying to apply that to a new digital environment, and it just was not clicking. And I knew a lot more than what even my immediate bosses did, and understood a lot more, not in sales per se, okay? Because in their environment, if you're a good salesperson, you can be a good manager. Well, anybody who's been to management school knows that that's not true. You can be a great salesperson and a horrible sales manager. So, they're two completely different skill sets. And that's what I found in this environment is that there was a huge lack of change over in management, especially in my region. And, as much as I wanted to try and, change things up, I offered suggestions, I talked to corporate, things that would be more engaging, ideas that would help, but realistically, it comes down to the sales. And I didn't prospect as much as I should have because I was starting to feel anxiety about what I was doing. And so it was really anxiety and depression that got me to where I was. And at one point, I was given an ultimatum, and if I couldn't hit my number, then I needed to take a leave of absence. And so I took a leave of absence to kind of figure out where I was at because I was so full of anxiety. I couldn't respond to emails, I couldn't respond to my clients, couldn't take calls, I couldn't do anything. I just was in a complete shutdown mode. Um, and so that's when I stepped away in January 29th of last year in 2023, and took that leave of absence to try and figure a few things out with myself.
On that, so one thing that's always worked for me is just doing it anyways. Like even if you're really anxious, even if you're really nervous, even if like it's really hard to do, like just taking a first step always helped me. What kind of helped you, I guess, overcome that anxiety? What kind of helped you work through that?
Medication, um, therapy. I mean, you want transparency. I'm being transparent. So it's not something where you can just push through it. If you've ever been in that dark place, in that place where you just can't get out of, um, it's really hard to get out and push through. And when I had younger kids years ago, I had a similar situation, but the difference was that I had kids in school, so I didn't have time to sit still to think about anything. I was working three jobs. I was taking them to school. I was doing things with them. I was putting on a facade that everything was okay when really it wasn't. Because when I wasn't doing something, I was just sitting home alone and sleeping on the couch. So it was just one of those times, and it just kind of snuck up on me over the course of a year, and I really didn't realize it until it hit. But in the last 5 years that I was with Haibu, I won President's Club twice. So I don't suck at sales. I mean, I'm not like somebody who can't sell. Um, but it was just the environment and the lack of support that really made me make the decision to leave. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I know I've definitely had my fair share of like difficulties of doing stuff. Like I've definitely had some interesting times where it's hard to even like get out of bed and that sort of stuff. But I can't imagine a company culture that's just kind of shoving you to do work is beneficial in any way, shape, or form. To a certain extent, as an employer, you definitely struggle with that because if you're paying someone to do something, you kind of expect a return. But at the same time, it's like I would say this about BNI. The motto is essentially givers gain, and so saying, "Hey, how can I help you as an employee?" In return, they want to help you just implicitly. Like even if you don't say it, even if you don't think it, you want to help someone who helped you. That's kind of the
right,
idea of, "Hey, how can I help you?" is a better way to do something than "How can you do something for me just because I'm paying you?" And that's kind of
yeah,
what I was hinting at earlier with the employee retention thing of, hey, can you help me out and take on some of the responsibilities as an HR person? Because it's again, it's that implicit like, I want to help you kind of thing.
right, right. I think what got me the most is just that in the time that I was off, I didn't get any phone calls. Um, and instead of asking me, like, hey, Tara, this isn't like you, what's going on? Just a quick conversation. The conversation was simply, well, if you can't hit your number by the end of January, then you better think of taking a leave of absence. And it had nothing to do with caring about me as a person. And I think that there really is a place for care in sales. Um, I don't think it has to be that way, but that's the way that my region was. And it was frowned upon to even reach out to people to, other regions to get support. So there was support available within the company, but I couldn't reach out without getting in trouble. So it was just, that was the kind of thing that I just couldn't do it anymore. And it really did traumatize me a lot more than I thought that it did. After I started going through therapy and going through things, it's been a year since I left the company, and I still am going through going through things, still trying to work through the process. So
Yeah, it's definitely. I suppose, especially with it being a year ago, you've got a long way to go. I suppose that's definitely a difficult thing. Like you can get again the 80-20 rule, right? You can get 80% of it good, so you're 80% good, but you still have that 20% that you really need to sit with.
yeah, and the fact of the matter is that as an entrepreneur, what I'm doing right now is no different than what I was doing then, as far as like doing the prospecting and doing call outs to, potentially get new speaking opportunities. So, you just totally doing the cold calling and working the networking opportunities, doing the same thing. So, I mean, realistically, the activities that I'm doing on a daily basis are no different. The difference is that I don't have somebody that's standing above me telling me that I need to hit some arbitrary number or this. And if I don't do it, then it's my own. The only person that I'm letting down is myself. And if I do it, then it's me that did it. So I can work more on my terms and I can sell the way that I want to as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a big thing with entrepreneurship. It's a lot of freedom. It's more work, but it's more freedom. Because with choices also come responsibilities, unfortunately. And so taking giving yourself more options, giving yourself more choices, just gives you more responsibility to burden.
It does. I mean, as an entrepreneur, like as a rule of thumb, what I teach people, because I spent 5 years teaching. I don't know if you knew that or not. I taught business and marketing classes at NTC. And as a general rule, if what you want to do, if you want to create your own company because you want to create your own hours, you want to be your own boss, then probably you're not in the right mental state to start your own company because your clients will dictate your schedule. Whether you're a realtor and you're getting, you're working nights and weekends, because when do people look at houses? Not when they're at work. It's nights and weekends when they have time with their spouse, right? Um,
Exactly.
it's during the off times, and yes, you want to be off, but you know what? That's the nature of the game. So if you don't want to work nights and weekends, then don't be a realtor. Um,
Exactly.
because you're probably not going to get as many sales as you would otherwise. Same thing with, selling cars or, anything. Your customer is going to dictate what your hours need to be. So if you go into it thinking that it's all about you and about setting your own hours because it's when you want to work, instead of having a mindset of, this is what I'm doing because I feel really passionate about helping these people and I want to do this for them and this is when they need me, that's a totally different mindset. So I try to let people know that, if they're in the wrong mindset, that you might need to work a little bit longer before they're ready to open up their own business.
I 100% agree with that. Like, full stop.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to? I have another question that I was going to segue into. Do we want to take a quick 15 bathroom
No,
break?
I'm good for now.
You're good for
I'm
now?
good.
Perfect.
Yep.
Do a marker. There we go. So, when I was growing up, I was always told life's about choices. Given that you've made difficult decisions throughout your life, whether it be leaving Haibu or to try your own thing with entrepreneurship, or really any of your personal struggles, what are the best and worst choices you've made in your life? and what can we take away from them?
Oh boy. Best and worst choices. That is a. Okay, I'll say that one of my worst choices was while I was going to school as an undergraduate. I got my degree in business administration or business management, and without any type of specific type of management or any kind of specific role that I would take on. And when I got my master's in business administration, it was kind of the same thing. So, an MBA is great, but without experience, you are an MBA for nothing. Um, it's hard to explain, but basically, if you don't have that specific type of experience, and it really is experience, so whether it's internships that you do as you're going through school, whether it's the work that you're doing while you're going through school, you've got that experience. Um, as long as you have the experience, the general degree will make a lot more sense. But without the experience, the general degree doesn't get you where you want to go. It gets you working at a gas station. It gets you working in retail as a manager. It gets you because that's the general thing, right? So, your my worst mistake was not having a specific type of degree that I was trying to obtain. So, when you're a teacher, you get very specific timeline for teachers, right? And there's a very specific goal at the end of it or outcome. And that's, getting your teaching degree and becoming a teacher, band teacher. There's all these different things. So that was part of my problem was that I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I started off as a music major, and then when that didn't work out my first semester, I really was lost, and my guidance counselors didn't really know what to do with me at the time, and so that was probably the worst decision I made was continuing to go to school without having a particular outcome that I was working towards or a specific degree that I was looking for.
It's that work with intent. Don't just do something because everyone else is doing it. Have an intention behind it.
Oh yeah,
Like
100%.
that's something that I see a lot of. Like, so I go to UWSP just for preference for people who don't know. And one of the big things that I see with a lot of I want like friends or like people that I know there is they're just going to college because it's what they were told to do. Like they don't even have a major picked. And I think that's such a terrible idea because especially with college prices currently, you're just throwing money at the abyss and you're taking on debt for it. And the worst part about it is that student loan debt is the only debt that isn't forgivable.
Right,
Like,
right.
what are
Yeah,
you supposed to do once you're in that debt? Like,
right,
if effectively, imagine coming out of high school, you're still a teenager, and go into college, you take on tens of thousands, maybe even $100,000 of debt for nothing.
right.
Like, I would just be distraught. Like, there's nothing you can do. And it's that same kind of idea. Like, what are you going to college for? Pick something and have a goal and aim single-mindedly at it. It's work with intent. Do something that you find intentional. That's part of the reason I'm doing the podcast right now, right? I'm doing it not as like just because I want to start a podcast or like playing with it, but because I want to work on my mannerisms. I want to work on learning from people. I want to talk to people. And so this is a good segue for me to do that, and it'll help me with sales. And so with the business, it's really helping me out there. So I'm working with the business in tandem, kind of, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, excuse me. Yeah, I totally agree. Having an intent. When I went back to get my master's degree, uh, part of the reason, and I'm really embarrassed to even say this, but part of the reason was that I didn't have the money to be able to afford to start paying back my regular loans. And so I decided to get my master's degree. And I, decided to get my MBA. It had nothing to do with my job. It would not have increased my pay at the current job, at that job. And so it's really, uh, really embarrassing. Now, I will tell you that I fully believe that education is valuable and that I definitely consider myself to be a lifelong learner. And that's not just a way to say, oh, hey, I hate paying my student loans. Um, I guess I've come to the understanding that I will probably never own a house. I just will own student loans. So I have my education, but no matter what, people can't take that away from me. Once you've got the education, it's yours. And, but yeah, having an intention to go with everything is probably the biggest, how do you put it, recommendation that I would have for young college students. And if you're not sure, take some time off. I mean, parents think that, oh my gosh, if they take a year off, they'll never go back. And that's just totally untrue. A lot of times, taking time off will give you more time to understand the world that you're living in, understand the work environment, and when you go back to school, you will actually have a better frame of reference for how the things that you're learning are going to apply to different jobs than if you go straight to school. You have zero frame of reference in how these things are going to actually apply and what you're going to use them for in the future. So it's really difficult to be able to concentrate on things when you have no frame of reference on how they're going to be used. Whereas, older students who go back after they're, in school, they've got a frame of reference on how they're going to be used. It makes so much more sense to sit through a class and, learn about management skills or learn about things when you know exactly how they're going to be applied in your particular situation. So, yeah, I agree for sure on the, having an intent and don't being afraid to take some time off.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's something that I wish there was just like a cultural flip switch of like maybe we should delay college, like average college students, because I see so many kids, so many, and I just every day it irks me. I'm like, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Like
Yeah.
all of that money, and you're just one. I have one guy that I know. He switched from computer science to essentially just a general business degree because it was easier. Like there was no intent, there was no thought behind it, and he's taking on student loans. Like his parents aren't paying for it. He's taking on the loans, and that's gonna bite him so much because he doesn't even know if he's gonna enjoy it. Like, what if he doesn't like the job?
Right.
Now he's in debt. What is he gonna
Right.
do?
Right. For me, it was a matter of like really just ignorance. I had no idea. I didn't understand finances. I definitely didn't understand debt. I didn't understand what I was doing. And, where that comes from, if it's a family thing, whatever. It's water under the bridge, regardless of what happened or why it happened. I'm not, blaming anyone in particular other than myself because it was me that made the decision to go to school. Um, but having that understanding of what you're going to do when you go to school, I definitely shared that information with my children, and encouraged them to take time off. My second son, my youngest, take some time off when he wasn't sure what he was doing, what he wanted to do for a living. So take some time off, try a couple of different jobs, do some things, actually, just experience life for a little bit and see once what fits. I know that a lot of people don't end up doing what they went to school for and think that the degree was a waste of time. But there's still a lot of soft skills that are learned, community wise, when you're living in the dorms, um, business management wise. I mean, for me, I think that no matter what type of degree you get, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, then everyone should have some basic management skills because eventually you're going to be an owner of your own practice or a manager in your department. And so, that should be built into more programs, I believe.
Yeah.
But as far as young school goes, I think that I think some schools have started to focus more on the applicable knowledge, like general knowledge for like manufacturing, for example. agriculture, those kinds of the trade industry in general. Focusing more on that as at a younger age, I think would be very helpful.
I agree.
Exposing children at a younger age so that they have more choices. If I had known about some of the things that are available out there, I may have made some very different choices. Um, Based on what I enjoy to do, doing today. So, takes a little while to get to where we're supposed to be, I suppose. Um,
That's
but
definitely the
that's
kind of the counterculture we're seeing of like guys. I think it's specifically males are dropping out of colleges at higher rates now and just going into trade school, which is really like I don't know why exactly it's a male thing specifically, but then you're seeing more women in higher education, you're seeing more guys in trades, and so there's this like I'm not again I don't know specifically why it's guys, I don't know why, but women seem to be consistent in higher education, whereas just guys dropping out like flies. It's crazy,
I
and I
think
the
probably because they're more physical jobs.
yeah
Like a lot of the trades are more physical. They are, just more physically straining. So it doesn't mean that women can't do them or don't do them. It just means that that's probably something that appeals to guys earlier at a younger age than girls or women that are going to school. And it's like, oh, hey, I can work with my Uncle Joe and make this much money. Yeah, I'll do this. Where guys, tend to make quicker decisions like that, and girls are, there's a lot more guilt and a lot more emotional tied well, if I quit now, I'll be a failure. There's all these things that go through our
yeah
heads, and guys are, I think, in general, and I probably going to be making people mad by saying this, but men are very simple thinkers. It's like either yes or no. There's not a lot of gray in between. They don't really overthink a lot of things. So it's like, pretty simple. If I can work for Uncle Joe or my cousin or somebody's dad and make this kind of money, it's like, okay, $70,000 or going to school for another year. It's a no-brainer. So yeah.
yeah. There's definitely I think the best way that I've ever heard that phrase, kind of that similar thing, is like guys look at the solution before they think about how it's going to make them feel. And a lot of time girls go through that like how is this going to make me feel and then get to the solution, whereas for guys that's flipped.
Yeah,
Like it's solution and then how is this going to make me feel.
that makes sense.
Okay. When you were recruited to Southwestern Publishing Company during the summer, you had 80 hours of training before being put in the field. Your job was to sell educational books door to door, and you said you were given a recipe to success in the manual and training. What's the biggest takeaway from that summer and the training?
Biggest takeaway is that you have to keep your mind right. It's all a mental game. Sales is nothing more than playing a mental game, and you have to be mentally tough in order to be able to hear the rejection, not take the rejection personally, and be able to go on to the next sale or the next opportunity and keep looking for that. And hearing no all the time, that's a pretty negative thing. But there's a lot of really successful people out there that long for the no's because they know that it gets them closer to the yes. There are people out there who can sell anything, and I'm not one of those people. I have to believe in the product that I'm selling. And so, the biggest thing I took away was just that I can do hard things, first of all. And it doesn't have to be I don't even know how to describe it. It's like going there was a total challenge. I had no idea what to expect. I had some really tough times that made it difficult, and I had a couple of weeks where I just couldn't go and knock on another door. At the end of the summer, I delivered the books that I sold. Overall, it was a success. I was asked to come back the following summer as a manager, but personally, I had experienced a lot of trauma growing up, and at that age in college, none of it had been dealt with. So I had all this stuff in my head, and it was really hard to manage myself anymore. And until I got therapy probably 4 years later, and started dealing with some of that trauma, sales were very difficult for me. It just was too emotional and too much for me to handle. So, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my limits, and the areas that really needed to work on to grow. But I also, I mean, there El Paso, living in a city that you've never been. I lived in the desert. I had never seen the desert before. I had never seen a rainstorm before or a sandstorm before. It's so hot that the tar on the road would get up on my car. It was an amazing experience, and I would never change that ever. In fact, that may be one of the best decisions I made in college was taking that job and taking that risk.
I agree. I definitely think that's a really interesting thing that you kind of bring up of like, although it seems like it burnt you out, although it was a difficult decision, you seemed to take a lot from it. And I
Oh yeah.
wonder how much of like the biggest learning experiences specifically for me have been the hardest things. Like the things that sucked the most were the things that were the most beneficial because it shows you where your limits are. It shows you that you can push past what you currently think your limits are, and so you can constantly grow. And would you say that that job is kind of the reason you're more into sales now, or would you say
For
it was
sure.
something else? For sure.
No, I would say for sure that it's a reason that I am more attached to sales. Um, I still have the big book that, was our sales training. The things that we learned that summer were so basic as far as basic principles that still apply today in sales and dealing with people, that it was very integral in forming myself and my opinion and my structure as a manager, and how I manage people, how I thought about things. I think I learned more that summer about life than I had in all of my years of college combined.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it was
Yeah, I definitely
very.
think like getting that hands-on experience there is really, really helpful. 100%. Like there's
Oh
no
yeah.
parallel.
No.
I'm the other thing that I was kind of I guess curious about is if you could really summarize, like boil down all of your sales training into a couple sentences, how would you do it?
In regards to
Like what if
what I've
you had to
taken
summarize
away.
if you had to summarize your sales experience and you had to say this is what you need to do to be a good salesperson in just a few sentences, what would you say?
Um, it would probably be different based on gender. I mean, somebody else might say something different if they were a male. Um, I would say that it takes caring and genuine caring about the product that you're selling and the people that you're selling to.
Mm-hmm.
If you care about them and you uh, work toward filling their needs, the rest of it will fall into place. If you are genuine, if you are authentic with them, um, just being real, people can tell that you're being real. But being fake doesn't get you anywhere. And so, in sales, that I guess it comes back to the CARE acronym. Really, it's about communicating very well with people and being able to accurately describe and ask. Communication is not always about talking. Communication is also about listening. And so listening for the right cues so that when you talk and you share about your products, you know exactly what kind of need you're trying to fill for them. Um, I had one, um, I had an experience when I was in college where I led a group of students from the United Campus Ministry, so 33 students, to do Habitat for Humanity in New Orleans back in 1994 in the spring. So we drove down there. There were two work sites because we had such a large group. And in one of the worksite groups, there was a guy there. And being that I was the one who kind of coordinated everything, everybody was constantly coming to me like, hey, what do you need now? Hey, what do you need? Do you need help with this? Where is that? Where, you know? And the guy looked at me and he said to one of the students, and it was just this simple. He's like, find a need and fill it. Find a need and fill it. That's what sales is all about. You're finding the
Yeah,
need and then filling the need. And that's really what it comes
100%.
down to.
That's one thing that I've definitely seen a lot. I know the Mission Coffee Networking group, someone brought this up, and I thought it was really interesting. So I was talking to them, and they were like, hey, I want to, I believe it was SEO. We were talking about SEO, search engine optimization, but it was stemmed from email marketing. So what I figured out was that they were just trying to market themselves. They were trying to get more people, they were trying to essentially get more eyeballs. And I said, look, email marketing isn't going to help you get more eyeballs necessarily. Email marketing is really taking the people that you already have, the people that already know you, and really showcasing more of yourself, showcasing more of your products, showcasing what you can offer them. Whereas something like SEO, search engine optimization, or social media marketing is going to be a better way to go to get more eyeballs. And so I said, look, where you're at with your website, I don't think it makes sense for you to do SEO right away. But I think it would be better for you to do social media marketing. And even though I don't offer it as a service, I thought it was a better idea to get them down the right path right away instead of trying to sell them something that they didn't need. That's one thing that I see a lot with salespeople is they sell their product and not the right product. Like the reality is don't sell your product, sell the product that the customer needs. Like it's not, and the best part about that is when they're ready, they're going to come to you because now they trust you. Like you offering a service that you don't have is showing that you care for the client. Exactly what you said, right? You have to care for them more than you care for the bottom line.
Hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's part of what drew me to Haibu is their solutions all in one. The way that their products were built, the way that everything kind of goes together, they all, play on one another. And so when I look at a consumer journey, where does that start? Typically, is when somebody has a need for something and they go to their phone and they're looking up, somebody's the hours for somebody's restaurant or the directions to get there without having that information correct on all the different systems, you've got a breakdown. You've already got a breakdown if you've got hours that say one thing on Facebook and hours that say something else on Google. And, that's where I try to start with people is like, look, you've got to get the basics and like the foundation down because driving people to a website that doesn't convert is absolutely a waste of time. You can spend thousands of dollars on advertising, but if they get to your website and they don't like what they see, you have wasted all of your money. Same thing. You spend 15 grand on a brand new website, but you don't do any search engine marketing, you don't do any SEO, you don't do any social media marketing. You've wasted $15,000 because you've got a billboard that you basically put in your garage and nobody's looking
Yep.
at it. So, you know, social media, I'm a little out on. I love social media in what it does as far as, capturing attention for people, but it really is the social aspect. It's not where the decision to purchase is made. Very infrequently is the decision to purchase, unless it's some like new gadget thing. But plumber, nobody's scrolling through and seeing a cool, reel on Facebook and like, oh, I need a plumber. Yeah, I'm gonna get him.
True.
No, if it's a new dress or shoes or some, tool gadget, yes, absolutely. My boyfriend is proof of that. He'll totally click on those and buy whatever it is. But, you know, when it comes to that stuff, it's about connection and it's about frequency and how many times your existing clients see you and see you engaging. And it's also about, the new eyeballs when you actually do ads and trying to get new people. and using the systems that they have for targeting people because they know what you're going to eat for breakfast before you do. And so, like, they use those systems to put your ads in front of people that are going to be most likely to be your customers. And they know that by all these different things that they do with, tracking your clicks and etc. Um, without getting into too many of the weeds. But um, yeah, I mean, having somebody put everything together in a big package is really nice. Sometimes you can't always get that. Not every company does that, but you're 100% right. I don't like when people sell what they sell and only sell to their own product. I like when they tell me all the information and let me know what else I need to know in order to be successful. Because you're right, that's when you build trust.
Agreed. And I think your point on social media is right as well. Of social media is more about building authenticity than it really is about like meeting someone. So the thing is, for certain products, yes, social media works great. Like anyone who's doing marketing, throw everything you have on social media because marketing is just eyeballs. That's all it really is, and social media is great for that. However, if you're doing like a B2B service, social media is probably not as good for you. So it's really about tailoring the right thing, right? Because as much as you want to sit here and be like, I want to do this, the reality is that it isn't always the best choice. And so having someone, you coming to like a marketer or someone saying, hey, I want to do this, but then if they can say, hey, maybe you're better off doing this and here's how I can help you, that's significantly better than what it is. Again, selling the right product, not your product.
Right. And here's the only caveat to that, whether you're B2B or not. When you're B2B, the reality of our um, world today is that a lot of companies that have been in business for 40 or 50 years, they don't have anybody else to sell to, right? Like their kids don't want to take over the business. So what happens in that case? They close, right? So a lot of these companies that were in the manufacturing industry specifically that did very customized types of work no longer exist. And the last time that your company needed to have used them was maybe 20 years ago, because that's when the last time one of these things broke down. But now you're looking for a company that can do that again. But you call and you're like, oh, they're gone. So, you're already Googling those services. It's not a company that's doing the search. It's a person. It's an operations
Right.
manager, it's a production manager, it's somebody, it's a person that's doing that search. So when that happens, if you have that a product that can fill their need, now does it happen often? No. So your ROI is, I mean, you're going to have to put a lot more in to get that ROI back. I mean, your ROI is going to be a lot lower on the Facebook marketing, however, or social marketing in general. But if you have it worded and customized to, hit the people that need to see it, it is about
Right.
branding, first of all. Finding out, like our BNI partner says, Justin, all the time, if they don't know you, they don't need you, right?
True.
So it is about getting eyeballs on your product and your service and your company. And it is about being there because if somebody searches for that, that's going to carry over into Facebook and what you're doing. And will they see those ads? Of course they will. So I don't always agree that B2B doesn't need to do Facebook marketing. I still think that social is very important for B2B, because they can still hit on the people that are making the decisions for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
particular company. So, I mean, if you're going to do it, just go into it with the right understanding of what you're going to get for an ROI. You're not going to be able to see
Yeah.
clicks. You're not going to be able to see like calls. What you're going to get is transitioning from there to your website because buying decisions aren't made on social; they're made on your website. Um,
I I
that's
completely
why they're
agree.
going directly to your website.
I think it's more of like phrasing it this way. I think a better way to phrase it is for product services, social media is a primary tool of marketing, whereas for B2B, like service based, I guess, is more of a secondary tool. It's not as critical as some of your other marketing tools can be. Like networking groups for B2B businesses are ridiculously, like, they're phenomenal ROI. I can, like, BNI, at Mission Networking, any of your business councils in your local area, all of those for B2B businesses, hands down, I would say are one of the best tools. Like, hands down. Because you get to the business owners, you can personally talk to them, and
For sure.
even if you don't get any sales out of it right away, you build the relationships with other business owners that convert.
For sure.
Like,
For
the
sure.
relationships are everything in B2B.
The products, I think, are what people love on social media is they love the videos of how it works. So even if you only sell to other, I'm going to say manufacturing like car parts, right? Like there's certain engine components and things like that. That does the company sell directly to the consumer? No, they only sell to wholesalers, etc. But they put their product on, they do a video on their product and how it works and why it's the best product in the market. Now, when you have a need for that brake pad, those new, camshaft, I don't know, whatever, I'm using stupid words. Um, but then, when you go to the auto repair place or the place to get your parts, you're going to specifically ask for that because, oh, yeah, you saw that cool video and it does this cool thing. So, and yeah, they're ranked the best. Whether or not they really are the best, I mean, people don't actually
Right.
verify that information. They just, it was visible and they saw it. And the people who are going to want to buy that are the individuals who are going to go to the consumer. So like, if you have a product on, that is typically sold through B2B services, still doing the videos and being able to show people how you make your product. My boyfriend is totally into the tractors and the John Deere stuff and all the uh, he's on Facebook and on Reels and TikTok way more than I am. I know that I should be more often, but we're working on that. But having that stuff available for people to look at is really key in capturing that market share. Because if somebody goes into the auto repair place and they're like, "Oh, you mean you don't have so and so product?" Oh, well, that's weird. So
Yeah.
that's, the company's opportunity to get another wholesaler. If more and more people are asking for that and they don't have it, well, now maybe we should start carrying it, right?
Right.
So there are ways that does help build your business and build the loyalty with your particular product, depending on what it is. So I still think that there's value in the social marketing. But like I said, again, it's just about setting the expectations properly of what that's going to look like.
Right. On that, I want to segue to the last question. So, Tara, you were a woman in sales that made it in the 90s and early 2000s. And that, in and of itself, is an accomplishment. So, being in college, I hear a lot of DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this being said, there's been a large push in recent years for more inclusion and diversity in the environment of a workforce. Given that you are, in part of women's networking groups and well connected, what would you say are the biggest challenges women face in sales and the workforce, and how have they changed from when you first started?
A lot of the challenges today um, are similar to what the challenges were before, as far as,
Mm-hmm.
you being your own worst enemy, and fighting that mental attitude and staying positive and, using positive self-talk to get you through and believing in the product that you sell. Um, but I still think that there's a lot of old-fashioned thinking in the business. So getting past the old type of ways is getting better. But how often do I go to a car dealership and find a female sales manager? I don't think I ever
Yeah.
have. Um, I see more females that are in sales. Usually there's like the token one. Um, but it's just not as it's just not as many people, women that are in sales. And I think part of it is because it is such an emotional type of draining job. I
Hmm.
put a lot into what I do, and I always pour into the people that my clients that I'm selling to. That is, I want to help them. I want them to understand what they're getting. I want them to see the value in what they're doing, and I pour a lot into every time I work with a person to make sure that they're getting the value. And years ago, it was a lot more very direct, overt types of sexism. So,
Hmm.
I had sold cars years ago, 20 plus years ago. And, I definitely had the lowest sales ratio because people would go to a guy instead of me. They didn't want to talk to me because I didn't know enough about the Ford and the Lincolns. Um, it, it was just that very overt type of sexism, fighting internal, harassment and not really having a way to overcome that. I was harassed several times, sexually harassed by coworkers, and it was just swept under the rug. It was never even
Yeah.
addressed. So I think that those kinds of hurdles are the ones that are most difficult to overcome. And especially if a woman has had a traumatic past, has had, sexual abuse in her past. And I say this because I think that it's a lot more prevalent than what people realize. That harassment is can be very triggering for people, and can make somebody be like, you know what, I don't want to work there anymore. And it only takes one bad person or one bad experience to be like, yeah, no, I'm out, and um, and then if you want to, I mean, you can talk yourself into all different kinds of things and rationalize why you shouldn't be in sales anymore. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a track that takes some strength, some inner
Hmm.
strength to be able to do that. Um, I don't know if that helps. If that did I
Yeah.
did I answer the question?
Yeah. No, no, that was really good. I wonder how much of that is sort of like, because I know a lot of, I guess, older people hold those older style beliefs. And I wonder how much of that is just a time thing. Because I know so many people just get stuck in their old ways. And realistically, like 20 years in a workforce is not enough time to really bake in like the changes that we need, right? And so I wonder how much of it right now is just a time thing. We just need to wait for people to retire. And like I hate to say that, but it's a reality that we need to accept. Like
You are
so many
totally right.
so many old managers are just kind of stuck in their ways. And it's the same thing of sales of like people are seeing the old way of sales and still doing it, and that's kind of what you saw at Haibu, right? They're stuck in the old ways and not adapting to the
Right.
new ways. And so it's that
Right.
really weird thing.
Yeah.
I know the other thing that I wanted to bring up because I wanted to get your opinion on it is how much of it is a selection effect. So, this is just a quote from one of the studies that I found was cultural gender egalitarianism. So essentially, the more freedom people have to pick their jobs, it moderated the level of gender differences in interests, and unexpectedly demonstrating that gender differences may be wider in egalitarian cultures. So the more freedom you have, the more the workforce seems to segment, like they seem to split into more women in specific types of roles. So I think a good example of this would be like teachers or nurses, whereas for guys, it's like mechanics kind of thing. And it seemed that the more equal it was, the more opportunities you had, it seemed to split even more. So, what are your thoughts on that? In being like, should we push more women into sales or should we kind of let them pick? Because sales seems to be more of a male dominated role, and I wonder if that would just mean more guys are in sales.
Um, Honestly, I think that a lot of that comes from how you were raised and your environment as you were being raised.
Mhm.
So, um, I don't think that it's something that all of a sudden when you turn 18 or you turn, you graduate college and now all of a sudden you're going to try and figure out what you want to do. I think a lot of those decisions are made, in elementary school, in junior high. So I think in order to influence those decisions and, create more structure for, you know, more diversity within the workforce, getting more women into certain positions and getting more men into certain positions, I think happens at a younger age and exposing kids to a variety of different experiences when they're in elementary school, when they're in junior high, giving them opportunities to even job shadow, having it be part of the school curriculum. I think would be a huge help in being able to you know, get more women into sales, because if I could have someone, shadow me for a day and they would just see what I do, maybe some people would be like, I don't ever want to do that. And others would be like, yeah, I love doing that. So I think it really just a matter of getting to people earlier and not so much that like all of a sudden, like the more choices you have, the more segmented it is. It's kind of that community effect. I mean, people want to be with people that they like and trust, and you know women tend to be more emotional, right? And men tend to not be as emotional. And so I think that naturally there are certain types of nurturing positions, whether it's teachers, whether it's nurses, whether it's caretakers, things like that, where they tend to attract the more nurturing, uh, human, and not so much people that are not as as nurturing. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know exactly what it would take to get women in sales, only because there's so many different varieties of types of sales positions. It's not like a nursing position. Um,
Yeah.
and sales, you're on the phone, you are meeting with clients. It's I'm not really sure how to get more women into sales. Um,
I agree. Yeah, that's definitely a really difficult one. I know. I was listening about this. So I believe his name is George. He goes by the Tin Men on Instagram, and he was talking about how we're running into this issue with boys of guys dropping out of schools, guys doing worse in schools, guys getting terrible grades. And one of the solutions that he proposed is more male teachers. But how do we do that? Right? Because got like as a guy, like I'm not particularly like drawn towards teaching. That's not something I want to do. And I wonder how much of that is like imposed on me by my environment and how much of it is just me. Right? That's a really difficult question to answer because there's only so much your environment can do to dictate what you're doing, and some of it is internal. And again, like proportions are like disputed, but that's a problem, right? We can't force people to do something they don't want to do.
um, and this would really not apply to that, I guess. My first thought is incentivize the behavior that you want. If you want
Mm-hmm.
to get more men into, teaching positions, or exposed to, get more men teachers, create an incentive for students, male students, to, mentor or, job shadow teachers, and create something equally the same for women to, cross into occupations that are typically, heavily weighted in, one particular sexual orientation than another, um, because that way, whether it's a student grade that you need to take or whether it's some kind of a job shadowing credit that you would get, but making them, incentivizing them to be able to do that and get credit for it, would really open the exposure piece of that. Um, that would be, my main recommendation would be to try and incentivize those crossovers.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's going to be the same thing with sales. Like the exact same thing. You need to incentivize it more. And so it's definitely that you need to find the right way to do it. And unfortunately, there hasn't been really a great consensus on that yet. And so I think that's just going to take time of people like weighing it back and forth and like, what's the best way to go about this?
I think just having an environment that cares about the people, that makes a space for caring about the customer and not always about the sale. Granted, the sale is important, and I understand that, but there needs to be a balance between numbers and caring about the customer and the client results. There has to be a balance, but in that structure, I think that's going to happen only with a primarily female leadership force, and
Yeah.
that's not something that's going to happen with traditional types of sales programs. So I think it would take an environment that it would be an entire culture shift that
Absolutely.
would include
Absolutely. I agree.
leadership.
I just kind of wanted to wrap up and say that, like, with women in sales, it's definitely getting a lot better. And I know this isn't specifically sales, and I find this kind of a funny but sad statistic. In 2023, women CEOs finally outnumbered the amount of CEOs named John. So I thought that was a funny. It's a good statistic, but it's also a sad statistic of like it shows that there's not many female CEOs, and I think we need more women in leadership there. And I don't entirely know a good way to advocate for that or go for that. And like you said, you incentivize it, but how do you incentivize it from the bottom up? Because that's really kind of
You
what we're
don't.
running into.
You don't. I think that what you
Yeah.
said earlier is really true, and that's just a matter of time.
Mhm.
Waiting until others are cycled out, hoping that the culture immediately underneath the leadership that's most recently going to retire has a little bit different mindset and has the ability to um, act more diversely than what the current mindset is. But either way, even if somebody ages out, they retire, that culture is typically ingrained into the organization, and so there has to be a way to start creating a different sales culture. And making that shift within the culture, um, by just being more caring and being a little bit more understanding, and taking some time to really understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your with the product or with the sale of your product.
Absolutely. And so I don't really have a whole lot else. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing this last minute. So,
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.